Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. Today's guest is somebody who covers the New York Jets, the New York Liberty, and college football for Elite Sports New York. He also hosts the Jets All the Way podcast to look ahead and preview the WNBA season and debate some hot sports topics. Geoff Magliocchetti, how are you?
Madison, good to be here. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's just weird timing that we plan to do the podcast today, and then the breaking news comes out a couple hours ago about the Jets firing Mike Maccagnan. We'll eventually get to that, but I want to start with the WNBA and preview that season a little bit. I'm going to go in the order of how I think the teams will finish the season, and you give me a mini preview of each team, all right?
Fire away.
All right. My number one seed pick is a team that I think had a good year last year. They have a good coach and a couple good players. I really like the Atlanta Dream this year. How do you feel about them?
I got to see some of the Dream yesterday, which would be Tuesday night. They were up at Connecticut Sun playing the New York Liberty in a bit of a preseason tournament there. And I got to say, I really liked what I saw out of them yesterday. And they're going to actually be hoping to have a full season of Angel McCoughtry. Remember, they had a solid year last year, but then again, they kind of fell out in the end because McCoughtry got hurt late in the year. So they definitely have some great pieces to work with. They got McCoughtry, they got Tiffany Hayes, they got some great players on the inside. Got Brittany Sykes. They also got some great players on the inside. So I definitely think that the Dream will be a trendy pick to escape the East with the number one seed. Remember, WNBA doesn't do seeds by conferences anymore, but they're definitely a great contender to get that elusive double bye that the top two teams get. So it's certainly possible. I definitely see good things coming from Atlanta this year.
Yes, I think that's going to be a trendy pick to be the one seed as well. My number two seed is a team that lost its best player to a torn ACL, and that's the Seattle Storm. Tell me about them.
Yeah, the Seattle Storm are going through some tough times going forward. They are the defending champions of this league, but unfortunately they've gone through some downright tragic situations. Head coach Dan Hughes recently revealed he's been battling cancer, and of course Breanna Stewart was lost for the season when she suffered an injury overseas. And it doesn't really help that the Storm have been kicked out of Key Arena for the 2019 and 2020 seasons because of renovations going on for the upcoming NHL team's arrival. They are set to return in 2021. But having said that, there is still plenty to get excited about if you're Seattle, because you look at this roster, you still have Sue Bird. And if you have Sue Bird, you could pretty much do anything. There's definitely potential here. You look at the rest of this roster, Jewel Lloyd is still there, Natasha Howard. There's a reason that they ended up winning the WNBA title last year. So you can never count this team truly out. I do expect them to rise up without Breanna in the lineup. Now, can they be the number two seed? I think asking them to go on a double bye with the defending MVP as a lineup, I think that's a little too much to ask for, but anyone counting the Seattle Storm out due to a mere injury of a player like Stewart is in for a tough surprise as we start this 2019 WNBA season next Friday.
Yeah, I like the Storm. Sue Bird, I really am a big fan of. Jordan Canada is a good player. Natasha Howard just won the most improved last year. Jewel Lloyd, I expect to take a step. So I like the Storm, even though they lost their best player. Number three seed, I have the team that I think a lot of people are going to pick to win the title, and that's the Phoenix Mercury.
Yeah, the Mercury are another team that's going to be missing a familiar face in the lineup, as Diana Taurasi will be out 10 to 12 weeks as we start the season. But then again, there's so much to be excited for other than a star player going down. DeWanna Bonner has had a great breakout year last year, her 7th year in the league. Brittany Griner has done Brittany Griner things, so she's done a great job there. Brianne January was another one who had a bit of a breakout last year, as did Steph Talbot. So there's plenty to be excited about, and when you have a head coach like Sandy Bronzello, an Australian native who led the Opals last year to the silver medal in the 2018 FIBA Women's World Cup, you can never truly count them out. This is a team of veterans, and you're definitely going to see that moving forward, including Taurasi. There are 3 players on this roster right now that have at least 10 years of WNBA experience. So I definitely think that the Mercury, with this veteran leadership, you can never truly count them out, even if you are missing the so-called Michael Jordan of women's basketball, Diana Taurasi.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Taurasi, and Brittany Griner's somebody that I've always respected as a player. I think she's been great. I remember when she was drafted, and that sounds crazy. Next up on my list, I have the Los Angeles Sparks, who brought in Derek Fisher to be their head coach. I obviously was not a fan of Derek Fisher when he was the coach of the New York Knicks. We'll see how he does in the WNBA. What do you make of the Sparks this year?
You know what? Derek Fisher does have a great lineup to work with in his first year as a WNBA head coach. The Sparks recently brought in Chiney Ogumike to play with their sister Nika, who has been with the team for several years now. They played together, but they're both Stanford alums. Actually, they did play together. Excuse me. They're both Stanford alums, and they've done a great job with their respective careers thus far. So that's going to be something to look at moving forward. Candace Parker, of course, returns, and you also have to look at their first-round draft pick, Marina Mabry, who emerges out of Notre Dame. So this is definitely a team you're going to watch moving forward. Kalani Brown is another rookie that I think people should keep an eye on. Alana Beard returns for a 13th season at Duke. So I definitely think that this Sparks team, they very well could be a team that contends for the double bye. And I definitely think that they, on paper at least, they're the most dangerous team in this league right now. It all boils down to how the first-year head coach in Derek Fisher reacts to his lineup. If I can make a comparison to another sport, it's kind of like what Aaron Boone dealt with when he was given the reins of the 2018 New York Yankees. There's so much firepower. If as a first year coach / manager, with Fisher being his first year in the WNBA rather than the NBA, it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts to that and how it translates to the regular season on the court. So the Sparks will be bar none one of the most interesting teams to watch this year.
Yes, that's a good comparison with Boone. We'll get to the Yankees eventually in the debate segment. All right, next up I have the Washington Mystics. I'm a big fan of Elena Delle Donne. What do you make of the Mystics?
It's hard not to be a fan of Elena Delle Donne. I mean, talk about a player who is just a perfect ambassador for this league, both on and off the court. She comes to play every day, and she does so much off the court for her family and whatnot. She does a fantastic job, and I really can't think of a better face for this WNBA moving forward. But something I think a lot of people have to realize, the Mystics are a lot more than just Elena Delle Donne. They brought back Natasha Cloud, who's, of course, offer sheeted by the New York Liberty, but she came back. Tiana Hawkins has done a great job coming off the bench for them. You have Mike Vogel coming back for yet another year. So this is a team that very well we could be talking about would have been the defending champions if not for a Delle Donne injury in the late stages of the WNBA playoff tournament. So I definitely think that should Delle Donne emerge healthier than ever and show no ill effects from the injury that hobbled her last season in the late stages of the playoffs, we're looking at a team that's going to be dangerous, they're going to be angry, and they're going to be very desperate to prove that last season was no fluke and they truly can contend for the title.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Delle Donne, as I just mentioned. I like their coach as well. Number 6, I have a team that was sort of the dynasty of the WNBA the last couple years, and that's the Minnesota Lynx. What do you make of them?
The Minnesota Lynx are an interesting case in that they've lost a lot of people. They've lost a few people this offseason, and they just retired Nikki Whalen's number, and their dynasty came somewhat to an end. Renee Montgomery had left last year. She went over and signed with the Atlanta Dream, and they had 3 All-Stars last season, 4 as a matter of fact, and Moore, Foles, Augustus, and Brunson. But they finished as the 7th seed with an 18-16 mark, and that was an unusual spot for them because Lindsay Whalen, she announced her retirement last year before the playoffs, and they lost in the first round. So this is going to be an interesting year. They basically have to, somewhat stem the bleeding down there, and to make sure that losing in a way, or not losing, but lack of championship results does not become the norm down there. There's plenty of experience on this lineup to make sure it doesn't happen, but with the WNBA so top-heavy right now, especially with young and developing talent, it's going to be interesting to see if the Lynx get lost in the mix once again.
Yeah, they're going to be interesting. I just still believe that they're a playoff team. 7, I have the Connecticut Sun. A lot of people are going to be skeptical about them being that low, but I just think the trading of Ogumike is what drops them to what I would say is a little lower than what people think. But I still like this team nevertheless.
No, it's perfectly fine to assume that. In fact, I might have right now. I'm waiting until Sunday's preseason games wrap up, but right now I think the Sun might be one of the odd teams out moving forward because some of the playoff teams really improved their non-playoff teams really improved their standing this year. So I definitely think that the Sun do have their work cut out for them, especially with the trade of Agumake over to LA. So there still is plenty of hope in this team. You know, Shekinna Strickland has been a great veteran off the bench. Jasmine Thomas is entering her 8th year out of Duke, another Duke veteran that's carved out a nice career for herself in this league. Bria Holmes, Jonquel Jones, players who have done a great job carving young careers for themselves, but you know their work is cut out for them, especially with so many of the playoff teams, namely Las Vegas, Chicago, and New York. They're teams that all improved themselves this offseason, and the Sun have their work cut out for them if they wish to remain in the playoff conversation this time around.
Yeah, I put the Sun in there because I like Alyssa Thomas and I like Jonquel Jones. I like their head coach too. It was just an out of respect pick because I still think that team's pretty good. Number 8, I have a team that you just mentioned, the Las Vegas Aces. I'm a big fan of Bill Laimbeer. I like Jackie Young, and I like Kelsey Plum. What do you like about the Aces?
I like plenty about the Aces, and what I love best of all is that Las Vegas has immediately established itself as a hotbed of WNBA activity. Las Vegas last year, they burst onto the scene. They had some injuries in the early going that prevented them from truly making a run at the playoffs. That and a bad end to the season. That kind of the sandwich end kind of kept them on the outside looking in. But it's a great job for this franchise to get back into the spotlight and do a good job working their way back in. And Las Vegas will actually be hosting the 2019 WNBA All-Star Game. So this was a great job by them to immediately get into relevancy. The franchise formerly known as the San Antonio Silver Stars, and before that, the Utah Stars. They had come on some tough times, so it's just great to see that a new market that's growing in sports between they and the Vegas Golden Knights of the NHL. It's great to see that they've been establishing themselves as a force to be reckoned with in the professional sports world. And there's plenty to be excited on this roster. Like you said, Kelsey Plum is someone to look at. Asia Wilson is coming back for her second season. So I definitely think that the Aces are going to be someone to be reckoned with as we move on into this playoff, because there's just so much momentum right there, momentum that only threatens to increase if the trade for Liz Cambage, last season's WNBA MVP contender, if the trade for her is completed. Now, Cambage released a series of not very positive Instagram stories that seem to hint she could take the 2019 WNBA season off entirely. But if they are able to complete a trade for Cambage, and it would just be great for her because she's another one. She defines this WNBA sense of fun and personality both on and off the court. I definitely think that they could advance this cause even further and go even further than the 8th seed. Right now, I have them even a little bit higher. I think Vegas could even contend for a bye if we're talking about maybe not the double bye, but maybe the top 4 bye. So I definitely think that Vegas is going to be a team to watch as we enter this 2019 season.
Yeah, I do think that that's a team to watch. I put them at the 8th spot because the Cambage deal isn't really done yet, per se. You never know, and I know I heard something about it falling through, and it could be another team that emerges, so I just put them at the 8th spot, and I just like the job that Laimbeer's done there. 9, I have the Chicago Sky. I think there's a chance they sneak into the postseason, but I think they fall short. What about you?
There's plenty to be excited about here, the Chicago Sky, because, they have the very deadly three-point duo of Allie Quigley and Courtney Vandersloot, and also that three-point prowess just got added to this offseason with the drafting of Katie Lou Samuelson out of UConn. So they're going to be deadly from deep. And also they have the inside game locked down in Stephanie Dolson. So I definitely think that the Sky are going to be a team to watch. I personally think they sneak into the playoffs this year. They had a rough year last year, but now they have a new coach going through, and I think that this is going to be a team that, is going to come out angry. They're going to come out looking for something to prove, because last year, they want to end this rebuilding process as quickly as possible. They're counting on 2 years right now in which they haven't made the playoffs. So I definitely think that under new head coach James Wade, who takes over for Amber Stocks, who was fired after that second playoff-free season, I definitely think the Sky are looking for something to prove, because Courtney Vandersloot and Allie Quigley, when you have talent like this in your lineup, adding to only Dolson and Diamond DeShields and even Gabby and even Cheyenne Parker, I definitely think that you almost can't afford, in a sense, to miss the playoffs with a lineup like that. Gabby Williams also in there. So there's plenty of name lineup, and you cannot afford to miss the playoffs, especially where 8 of 12 teams make it. You can't afford to miss the playoffs with a roster like that.
Yeah, that's very true. That is a very good roster. Like I said, I won't be surprised if they sneak in. Another team you said that made improvements, which I agree with you about, I have is the 10 spot. I was debating between two teams. I ultimately decided to put the Liberty at 10. I'm a big fan of Tina Charles. I think she can contend for the WNBA MVP. I just think she's a great player. But I'm just skeptical about just them in general and their coach. And I like Katie Smith, but I just think Bill Laimbeer was a better coach for them. What do you make of the Liberty?
There's plenty you can say about the Liberty in the sense that last season, it kind of, you want to put an asterisk next to it in a way because last season was just one of chaos with ownership limbo hanging over them. Remember, they were owned by the Madison Square Garden Company, were more or less evicted from the building, MSG, and forced to play their games in tiny Westchester County Center, which seats under 2,000 for Liberty games. So that, you could say, put a bit of an asterisk next to that because they had no idea. They thought they might have even been relocated last year. But talked to some of the Liberty players earlier last week, and they say that didn't really affect them last year, and they're really just hoping that last season's 727 mark was just a one-year thing, and that they can improve on that. And it's easy to see where you see why they say they can improve on that because there's plenty of new names in this roster. People like Asia Durr, the second overall pick in last month's draft, and another name that's really getting some big hype down there is their second-round pick in Han Zhu, the WNBA's first China-born draft pick since 1997, the original draft as it is. So there's definitely plenty to be excited about. The Liberty, let's face it, they've had plenty of success with the core that they have now, and they brought back a good amount of that core. They brought back Rebecca Allen. They brought back Amanda Zowie B, who had a career best season coming off the bench last year. And Kia Nurse, their first-round pick last year, is expected to take a larger role in this lineup. It's easy to say that the Liberty could improve this year because last season, really, you couldn't have gotten much worse. But there's definitely hope in this roster. And in terms of Katie Smith, she learned from the best. She learned from Bill Laimbeer, and she's really done a great job of keeping this team together, keeping their heads up in the face of uncertainty. And now that they have some assurance in ownership and in their future, with Brooklyn Nets minority owner Joseph Desai buying the team back in January and setting them on a course to play their games in Barclays Center. They will play 2 games there this year, and they're hoping to add more on a full-time basis. Tina Charles definitely wants to play there on a full-time basis. She made that abundantly clear on Media Day. So I definitely think that the Liberty do have some hope going forward. Whether that translates to wins on the court remains to be seen. Like we discussed, there's just so many teams. This WNBA is so top-heavy, especially in the Eastern Conference, that it may be difficult to make some true headway. But there's no doubt that the Liberty improved, and it's definitely going to be something to watch going into 2019 next Friday night.
Yeah, I'll say about Katie Smith. Like I said, I think she'll be okay, but Laimbeer I really, really liked for that team. And you said that she's learned a lot from Laimbeer, and last year was a little bit messed up with ownership and whatnot. 11, I have the Indiana Fever. What do you make about them?
It's hard to say much about the Indiana Fever right now. It's really not working out for them right now in terms of the Pokey Chapman era down there. They're currently working on a 2-year playoff drought. They haven't won a playoff game since they went all the way to the WNBA Finals back in 2015. Stephanie White's penultimate first of 2 seasons down there. There's definitely names on this roster to get excited about. So you're not exactly hopeless if you're looking at the Fever because there's great names to look at. Tara McCowan out of Mississippi State is definitely a name that you should keep an eye on. Kelsey Mitchell is another one, as is Erica Wheeler. So talent is there, but again, the WNBA, there's just too many established good teams right now for the Fever to truly contend. And last season, was just brutal for them. They're really struggling right now. They struggled to 6 wins, back-to-back years of single-digit wins. So you could say that Pokey Chapman is on the hottest seat of anyone in the WNBA right now. They need to produce, but it's going to be difficult. They face a huge uphill battle moving into 2019.
I agree with you there. Number 12, I have the Dallas Wings. This is solely because I think that the Liz Cambage trade is going to happen. Skylar Diggins is on maternity leave. If Diggins comes back, maybe I'll end up flipping the Wings and the Fever. But right now, I'm going to have the Wings in last.
It's really hard to get too excited about the Wings' chances this year because, like you mentioned, Liz Cambage will likely be traded, and rumor has it she's not even happy in Dallas as is. So, you really can't get too hopeful over that situation. Skylar Diggins-Smith, it's really cool to see that she's back at training camp just so shortly after giving birth. But unfortunately, by the time she comes back, the Wings could be in a hole that they can't get themselves out of. It was because of Cam Bage's big rise, her rise to true superstardom in the WNBA last year. Remember, WNBA record 53 points in a game against New York last year. It was because of that they managed to sneak into the playoffs as the 8th seed. But there are some players on this roster that you can look at. Caleb Thornton has always been a threat from deep. They were able to land Iowa's Megan Gustafson in the second round of the draft this year. But right now, it's going to be a huge uphill battle for them, especially with a new coach coming in. Brian Agler, he has the experience. He coached the Los Angeles Sparks to some of their best years. But right now, he has a huge uphill battle moving forward. There was some tensions last year, especially between the coach, Fred Williams, who was eventually let go with three games to go. Assistant coach Taj McWilliams-Franklin oversaw the last playoff run and the sole playoff game. So right now, the Wings just face an uphill battle right now. There's too much chaos for them to even truly think of a playoff spot at this point. They just need to keep their heads above water until Skylar Diggins comes back, and by that point, it could be too late.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Quickly, before we get to the other sports, I want to go over who I have winning the title. I'm going to take the Phoenix Mercury because I think that Diana Taurasi will be back. Although I have them in the 3 seed, I just really like their experience. Brittany Griner, I like their head coach. And like you mentioned, DeWanna Bonner had the big breakout last year. I just am a fan of that team.
I agree with you there. I think they'll definitely be a team to watch. That team is by no means done once, even if with Diana Taurasi out for so long. My personal pick right now is going to go to the Washington Mystics. I think last year they felt was their opportunity to shine, but then Elena Deladon went down, and they were kind of put in some limbo right there. So they did make the WNBA Finals last year, and I definitely think they'll be eager to prove that was no joke. And they're going to want to prove that they're a team that's here to stay in the national conversation. And a great way to do that is to capture your first WNBA title. So I'm going to say the Mystics right now, and I believe right now I have them beating the Los Angeles Sparks. So Washington over LA, I say it takes the full 5 games.
I'm going to go with the Mercury over Atlanta in 5. And you mentioned the Mystics. I'm going to go with Elena Deladon as my MVP. I'll give you that prediction.
Yes, I think Elena Deladon, like I said, she has been a tremendous ambassador for this game as a whole. I don't think you could ask for anyone better at this point. She's done a great job on and off the court, and there'd be no better way to, fully establish her reign over this association. One that's growing in popularity, one that's growing in off the court contributions as well. There's no better way for her to truly make her mark on this league than a year like this, an official, rise to glory and return to power for the Delaware product.
Yes, I agree with you there. Before we get into these little debates I have written down, give me your thoughts on the Jets' firing of Mike Maccagnan.
This is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in terms of, from a football standpoint, because it's really weird to see, you fire the head coach, you say the general manager is safe, you let the general manager go through the offseason, progress through it, go through what was, let's face it, a very solid free agency period. You brought in lots of name brand talent, namely Le'Veon Bell, namely C.J. Mosley, even Colecchio Semele to update the offensive line. They didn't get everything they wanted. For example, they were unable to trade back into the second round this year and also had to deal some of their other draft picks away. But definitely I think that it's so unusual in the sense that most of your offseason checklist is complete, and now you decide to make this move. All I know is that rumored rift between Adam Gase and the front office must have been so huge if it necessitated Mike Maccagnan's immediate firing now. Now, this is an interesting case They want him to lead this. I don't think they were going to fire him either way, let's face it. But right now, he secured a win before he's even played a single down of football. Granted, that win has come against his now former general manager, but it shows that the Jets are fully putting their eggs in the Adam Gase basket. Whether that works out for better or worse, time will only tell. As for Mike Maccagnan's tenure, let's face it, the Jets are in one of the most unusual spots in football as it comes to an end. It's unusual in the sense that right now they're one of the more downtrodden franchises in the sense that they have a playoff drought that's nearing a decade long, the third longest such streak in the NFL right now. And that's obviously a major problem. You can't go a decade in this league without missing the playoffs. You can't go a decade in any league without missing the playoffs. But in terms of this right now, the Jets are also one of the more hopeful teams moving forward, and that's thanks to Mike Maccagnan's moves. Le'Veon Bell, who's rumored to be the subject of the rift between Gase and Maccagnan, apparently that Gase was not pleased with the price tag attached to both Bell and Mosley. So definitely Maccagnan staked his reputation on these guys. He bought in Le'Veon Bell. He bought in C.J. Mosley. He's already bought in via the draft Jamal Adams and Sam Darnold, two guys who could define this era of New York Jets football going forward. So right now, the Jets are in one of the most unusual positions in the league. And this kind of takes away from what was a strong offseason. And it's very confusing, and time will only tell if it affects them on the field. So looking forward to that, looking forward to see what happens at both OTAs, minicamp, and of course the upcoming training camp, which leads into the preseason. So I'm looking forward to see how this affects them on the field.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this too. And our first debate, believe it or not, has to do with the Jets. Who do you think is the more dysfunctional New York football team right now with this firing of Mike Maccagnan? The Jets or the Giants? And I'm going to give you my opinion. I think it's the Giants because I think Dave Gettleman has done really poor. I am not a fan of the Daniel Jones pick, as I've mentioned several times on this podcast. I do not like the trading of Odell Beckham Jr. because I personally think he's one of the best receivers in football, and I don't think they got enough for him. If anything, they should have traded Odell to the Browns last year for the number 4 pick, and maybe they have Saquon Barkley and a quarterback rather than Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. Who do you think is the more dysfunctional New York football team right now?
Man, I can't even argue with you on that one. It has to be the Giants right now because, let's face it, the Jets have had a hopeful offseason in bringing in Le'Veon Bell and also bringing in C.J. Mosley. They did a good job in that regard. But the Giants right now, you have to think, what's there to hope for at this point? You needed to go into 2019 with a solid plan for Eli Manning at quarterback and with a solid plan to succeed Eli Manning at quarterback. And Daniel Jones appears to be that plan. I personally haven't seen anything that would lead to Daniel Jones being the true successor here in New York. And it's funny you should mention about the Giants trying to get more for Odell because I agree with you 100% in that regard. When you have arguably the best receiver in all of football, that's a whole other topic for debate, whole other topic for another day. But when you have arguably the best receiver in football, you need to get, and you decide to put him on the trading block, you need to get as much value as you possibly can. And with all due respect to Jabril Peppers, who's carved out a decent career as a safety in the league thus far, and all due respect to getting that 17th overall pick, you had to do more. You had to get more than Jabril Peppers in the 17th overall pick if you're daring to put the best, or arguably the best receiver of football on the trading block. So right now, I think the Giants have simply made more errors at this point, and unfortunately for them, it doesn't show any sign of ending anytime soon, especially because they're in a crowded NFC where the division could be spoken for, where they battle the Eagles and the Cowboys, where the Eagles and the Cowboys battle it out for the next couple of years. And also, that wild card picture is very crowded. So it's going to be very difficult for the Giants to compete, at least in the next 5 seasons, I believe.
I agree, especially within the next 3, 4, because there's so many contenders in the NFC. You have the 2 teams you just mentioned. You have the Bears. You have, I think, the Vikings and the Packers will be there. The Saints, I think that there's a chance the Panthers can surprise. And then you have the Seahawks, who I think are going to take a step back because they made some weird decisions in my mind this offseason. And obviously the Rams, who represented the NFC in the Super Bowl last year.
And by the way, I just wanted to add one more thing about the Giants. And look, you can say all you want about Eli Manning. I believe that when all is said and done, let's face it, the guy's a Hall of Famer, because by the time Eli retires, whenever that is, it's going to happen sooner or later. Certain factions of the Giants fan base need to come to that realization. They need to come to grips with that. He's going to retire sooner or later. And by the time he does so, he's going to rank at or near the top of several major passing categories, pretty much every single one. And on top of all that, his longevity is something that's unheard of in today's NFL. And also the fact that, let's face it, at the end of the day, he beat what's arguably the greatest dynasty in NFL history twice. So you want to say that he has, but apparently Dave Gettleman believes that he has multiple years left in him. If you believe that, fine. I'm not going to stop you. That's your opinion. But here's the thing. If you believe this, why wouldn't you use your first-round collateral to build a team that allows Eli Manning to succeed further? Why would you trade away one of his biggest offensive weapons for not just him, but the entire league in Odell Beckham Jr.? Why wouldn't you use that 17th pick that you gained on an offensive player, or that 29th pick or that 30th pick that you gained? Because at 17th, they picked Dexter Lawrence out of Clemson, and 30th, they picked DeAndre Baker, a cornerback out of Georgia. That 30th pick, for example, could have been used on someone like N'Keal Henry, a wide receiver at Arizona State, who went 2 picks later to the New England Patriots. So I really don't understand what the Giants are trying to do. They're sending such mixed signals, and I really think that's going to hurt them moving forward.
Yeah, I actually didn't mind the Dexter Lawrence and DeAndre Baker selections. I think that the Giants' defense was very poor last year, and their offense actually wasn't that terrible without Odell Beckham because of, obviously, Saquon Barkley, who I think is amazing.
And you know what? I think at the end of the day, the Giants made the right move in taking Saquon Barkley with the 2nd overall pick. I think there's no use in comparing Saquon Barkley and Sam Darnold. We'll be doing that forever, and I just think there's no use in doing that right now. I think it's possible that both of those picks could end up being the right decision for your respective teams. And the Giants made the right move at the number 2 pick because, when you get that kind of an athlete falling into your grasp like that, you have to pull the trigger. And like you said, he makes the whole offense better. He can really offset the loss of Odell Beckham Jr. So I'm not going to argue with that number 2 pick of Saquon Barkley at all. I think it was the right move for the Giants, and I definitely think it's going to pan out for both teams.
I think it will pan out for both teams as well. And speaking of Sam Darnold, my next debate question is, who do you think of the 2017 rookie quarterbacks, excluding Baker Mayfield? So I'm talking about Darnold, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, and Lamar Jackson. Who do you think makes the biggest jump next year?
I personally think it's going to be Darnold because the Jets did what they could this offseason to make him more comfortable. The process for Sam Darnold started before the regular season even ended, in the fact that the Jets re-signed one of his favorite targets, receiver Quincy Enunwa, to a 4-year extension. So familiarity with the guys he has, check. They also put a 2nd-round tender on Robbie Anderson, his top target last season. So he could bring back the familiar faces, and you get rolling. Good on them. They've also started to rebuild the offensive line a little bit and get him some protection back there. You look at the great quarterbacks in NFL history. All of them seem, tied to the hip almost with a great blocker blocking for them, with a great offensive lineman blocking for them. For example, Troy Aikman, he had Larry Allen. Peyton Manning, he had Jeff Saturday. So I definitely think that Colecchio Semele could be the lineman that protects Sam Darnold and becomes synonymous with his potential greatness. So I definitely think the Jets did that. And Darnold, in a sense, the load has been taken off of him in a sense with the arrival of Le'Veon Bell, because no longer do Darnold's miracles have to single-handedly win games. So the pressure's off of him a little, and he's been put in the best situation. Now, having said that, there's plenty of potential for guys like Rosen and Jackson to succeed. I think Jackson got kind of a bit of a raw deal. He did lead the Ravens to some good wins late in the year. So I definitely think that he has potential there and does have the multi-talents you need to survive in this NFL. Rosen, I'm very interested to see what happens with him in Miami right now. The Dolphins are going through a bit of a rebuilding phase, so this year is probably going to be a bit of a mulligan. It'll be a good year for him to learn a little bit from veteran Ryan Fitzpatrick. I really think that's going to benefit him in the long run. As for Josh Allen, he surprised me last year. I really wasn't too impressed with him coming out of Wyoming, but he did put some excitement back into Buffalo Bills football. And, we've seen so many great quarterback rivalries through over the years. Brady against Peyton Manning, Eli Manning against Tony Romo, and they've done Aaron Rodgers against Jay Cutler in a way. So I'm definitely interested to see if Darnold against Josh Allen becomes the next great NFL quarterback rivalry, especially with the guarantee that they'll face each other twice a season. So I'm interested to see that, and I definitely think that Allen, if he improves his accuracy a little bit, and the same goes for Jackson, too, by the way, who Jackson also got a good deal in that he got to learn from Joe Flacco a little bit, even if Flacco shows reluctance to do the same in Denver right now for Drew Luck. So I think that all of them have a chance to succeed, but right now the Jets, ironically thanks to the efforts of Mike Maccagnan with his final move, the Jets have put Sam Darnold in the best position to succeed right now.
I agree with you 100%. Darnold would have been my pick, too. All right. Here's one that on Twitter that you and I were discussing. The more popular sport right now, the NFL or the NBA? I think you and I disagree here.
Yeah, I know. That's finally an actual debate. But yeah, I was really looking forward to that question. And right now, I have to say it's the NFL because the NFL, yes, many heinous things have happened over the past few years in this league, and it has tuned out a portion of the fan base. The domestic violence issues have been disgusting. The national anthem debate has been very polarizing, and I think you're losing fans from both sides of that debate in the sense that some people are turning off because of the kneeling, while other people are turning off because of the treatment of those who knelt. So I definitely think that some viewers have been lost in that sense. But having said that, you look at the NFL ratings otherwise, there's still ratings that the other leagues would salivate for. And you look at things like Thursday Night Football, the Pro Bowl, heck, even the Alliance of American Football. I think it's the ratings for those prove one thing. Americans can't agree on much, but they love football. And the NFL gives it to them. The NFL has gone on a quest to dominate almost every month of the calendar, and for the most part, they've almost succeeded because the Super Bowl might be is in early February. By March, the combine is happening, the players are back, and we're starting draft discussions. And the combine has been another sign of the NFL's dominance in the sense that nothing is truly happening, but in the football landscape. But then again, look what else is going on in the sports calendar at the time. MLB is in spring training. The NBA and NHL seasons are going down to their final stretches. But what's leading up SportsCenter? How many bench press reps the top lineman prospect did? And I think nothing showcases the NFL's dominance more than schedule release week. Because again, the NBA and the NHL, they're in their playoffs by then. And the MLB, they're in their opening day stages. But what's leading off SportsCenter? What's everyone talking about? How many Sunday Night Football games their team got? What are people talking about? Who the Week 1 opponent is going to be for the defending Super Bowl champion. So I definitely think the NFL has turned mundane events. The NFL schedule release, we know what those matchups are going to be years in advance. 14 of the 16 matchups already decided. And by the time the preceding regular season ends, we know who the opponents are going to be. But the mere attachment of times and dates for these games cause people to go absolutely insane. And that's why I think the NFL isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And that was on display through the short-lived Alliance of American Football, which was beating out primetime NBA games in the ratings for the games that were on CBS. They did so in that Week 1 game. Face it, Americans love football, and the NFL gives it to them, and the AAF did as well. The AAF's problem was not in its ratings. It gave you decent enough football. It had some semi-known names out there, guys like Trent Richardson and later Johnny Manziel. Their problem was they didn't do their financial homework beforehand, and it led to their demise. So NFL can succeed, by the way. But I digress. American football, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. The ratings are still one that other leagues would salivate over, and I give credit to the NBA. They've done a great job in the sense that they've added drama to a league where, let's face it, there hasn't been true drama in years because everyone still thinks the Golden State Warriors are going to roll to this title, I believe, and they really haven't given any indication otherwise. So I definitely think that the NBA has done a great job. They make themselves relevant in the dead of summer with all the dramatics, all the Twitter comments, all the reports coming out. I'll give them credit in that. NBA free agency has become a monster all on its own. So I'll give the NBA credit there. I'll also give the NBA credit in the sense that they've been able to up their international game maybe a little bit better with so many international stars coming over, the league becoming popular over there. So I'll give them credit in that regard. But right now, I think football is still king, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon.
All right, yeah, I disagree. I'm going to make mine quick because we don't have that much time left. I think it's the NBA. I think that in Sports Center terms, they've been opening with a lot of NBA. I watch Get Up every single morning. They've been opening with NBA because of the lottery, because of the playoffs, because of Kevin Durant. I just think that, especially if Kevin Durant signs with the New York Knicks, I really think that they're going to be the story a lot in the coming months and years, depending on how long Durant's potentially in New York for. And the downfall of the NFL, I mean, you mentioned it. It's the domestic violence issue and the kneeling for the anthem and the Trump stuff. I just think that that's kind of been their downfall. Although the NFL's still big, the ratings I get, they're outrating the NBA, but I just think the NBA is more popular because it's more stardom and more conversations, more player movement potentially this summer. Right now, that's why I feel that the NBA is more popular than the NFL. Couple quick ones. We don't have much time left. Do you think the Lakers did the right thing with Frank Vogel over Tyronn Lue?
Personally, I don't think. I think Tyronn Lue might have been the better option, if only for the LeBron James connection. But having said that, if Frank Vogel is a consolation prize, he's a darn good one because he kind of got a raw deal in both Indiana and Orlando. His contract was not renewed with the Pacers, despite leading them to a 47-win season with a somewhat depleted team after Paul George left. And then in Orlando, he was never really given his own roster and let go by impatient Magic management after just 2 seasons. So, Tyronn Lue might have been best if you wanted to truly foster a LeBron in LA situation down there. But in terms of consolation prizes, you could do far worse than an accomplished guy like Frank Vogel.
Yeah, I think Frank Vogel's the better choice. I think he got a raw deal in both Orlando and Indiana. I remember Paul George got hurt, and he did a darn good job in keeping them in playoff contention, and he did really well when he had Roy Hibbert and Lance Stevenson there. And like I said, Orlando was just 2 years. They gave them a raw deal. Ty Lue, I just think he's he did a good job at Cleveland, but to me, he's just LeBron's boy, and I just feel that Vogel did more with less, and Lue was out in 3 games this year with the Cavaliers. So, last night was the draft lottery. Zion goes to the Pelicans. Do you think this changes Anthony Davis's mind about a trade?
I don't think it fully does, but I think it gives him at least something to think about because, he put up a lot of drama in the late stages of his New Orleans career. I remember the last game that was actually in New Orleans, he wore a shirt of some kind that read, "That's all, folks," of course, echoing the famous catchphrase from the Looney Tunes franchise. So I definitely think it's something that he has something to think about now. I don't think his mind is fully changed. I believe Shams Charania mentioned something that he wasn't fully convinced. He wasn't fully convinced out of a trade just yet, but he definitely has something to think about now that there's potential that he could be with Zion Williamson. So while it's not fully changed, I think this saga is nowhere near over. Anthony Davis, there's definitely a better chance. I'll put it this way. There's a higher percentage of Anthony Davis staying in New Orleans today than there was yesterday, and that percentage might have increased triple-fold.
I agree with that, but I still think he's traded. But I don't know where exactly yet. Let's switch over to hockey. You and I are both Rangers fans. Jack Hughes and Kaapo Kakko are the top 2 projected picks. There are rumors that the Devils might take Kaapo Kakko at 1. If you're the Rangers at 2, do you take Jack Hughes or trade down?
I think you take Jack Hughes because, again, let's face it, you could do far worse in terms of consolation prizes than Jack Hughes. So I would go with him. And Ranger fans, I've seen a lot of complaining in the sense that, now the Devils will go get Kakko. And I understand that. Everyone has pumped themselves up for Kakko. I almost understand where they're coming from. But come on, Jack Hughes is a heck of a consolation prize to have. He may be equally, if not more talented than Kakko on paper. Kakko right now might be the most NHL-ready prospect of this draft, but in terms of longevity, Hughes might have him beat there. He's been a tremendous skater. He's been multi-talented, and I definitely think Rangers fans are kidding themselves if they were to be, quote-unquote, disappointed with, quote-unquote, settling for Jack Hughes. So I definitely think they stick at number 2 and use it on Hughes if Kakko is taken by New Jersey at number 1.
I think Hughes goes to New Jersey at number 1. I had somebody on the podcast a week ago that's a Devils fan, and he thinks they're going to take Hughes because Taylor Hall and Jack Hughes apparently skate together in the offseason. Yeah. So I do think Hughes goes to New Jersey, Kakko to the Rangers. John Davidson, I believe, will be taking the president of hockey operations job with the Rangers. Would you like that hire?
I would. I very much would, because Davidson, give him credit. He did a great job with the Columbus Blue Jackets. They overachieved this year, pulling off that amazing sweep of the Tampa Bay Lightning, the President's Trophy winners who rose themselves to historic heights. So I definitely think it would be great to welcome John Davidson home and, start this process anew. I kind of wanted the Rangers to pick up Steve Yzerman, but that didn't happen. He did a great job assembling the aforementioned Tampa Bay squad. Ironically, with former Rangers, no less. Plenty of Ryan Callahan, Ryan McDonough in there, Anton Strawman. So I definitely think that Davidson would be a good hire for his team. And, I give the Rangers credit for doing their due diligence right now. The easiest thing to do would be to simply hand Davidson the job under the guise of, a hometown welcome home and be like, hey, legacy type thing. But give them credit for doing their due diligence. And I think that John Davidson would be the best thing for this team moving forward. I definitely think if anyone would have the Rangers' best interest in mind, it would be JD.
Yeah, I really like the idea of JD coming back to the Rangers. Last topics are baseball. Our buddy Derek Felix on Twitter tweeted the other day that he thinks the Yankees are the best team in the American League. Do you agree with Derek or me? I think it's the Astros.
I think you're absolutely right. It's the Astros right now, because obviously Derek knows what he's talking about, and he has some great opinions out there. So I don't want to discredit him at all. But right now, the Astros are the team to beat, because they're basically the established power in the American League. They have the World Series under their belts. They have the established players in there. The Yankees right now, give them credit. Aaron Boone has catapulted himself to the top of the Manager of the Year discussion right now. Even his staunchest critic can't deny the job he's done with so many injuries and so many guys stepping in. He's done a tremendous job, especially in the division with the defending World Series champions right now, with the upstart Tampa Bay Rays. He's done a great job. But right now, I think the Astros still have control of the American League as a whole right now, because they're the team with the established talent and the established stars and the established accomplishments right now. Until the Yankees show that they can beat the Astros, remember, they took them on in a 3-game set earlier last month and were promptly swept. And that was before some of the more major injuries happened. So they were operating at somewhat more full strength, definitely more full strength than they were operating at right now. So until the Yankees show that they can hang with the Astros in a series, I think the American League is Houston's to lose.
I totally agree with you there. And the Yankees were somewhat shorthanded in that series. I remember Luis Severino obviously wasn't there, and I know Chad Green had an implosion in one of those games. Some of those games were winnable for the Yankees, but they just couldn't get it done. Last one for you is the National League. Who do you think's the team to beat in the National League? To me, right now it's the Dodgers, but nobody's playing better than the Chicago Cubs.
Personally, I think the team to beat in the NL will be the Milwaukee Brewers moving forward. When you have a guy like Christian Yelich in the lineup, the sky is the limit right there. I really don't get that vibe right now from the Philadelphia Phillies. I think the Cubs and the Brewers, that's going to be the matchup to watch this summer. It's going to be some great matchups between those two squads, two hot squads that really know each other better than anybody. Played somewhat of a playoff game last year with that one-game playoff side, the NL Central. So I'm really looking forward to see who emerges on top in that division. Of course, you have LA. I've been really impressed with what the Arizona Diamondbacks have been able to do thus far in the year. I thought the Diamondbacks were going to be a team that was ready to move on and start a rebuild process, but they've done a great job there. I still have faith in the Atlanta Braves. So much talent, both raw and both young and experienced. I definitely think they're going to be a team to watch moving forward. Of course, you have the Phillies. Bryce Harper's struggling, but they're still managing to tread water at the top of the NL East right now. But right now, I think the team. If the series ended today, and I had to choose a NL representative in the World Series, I would go with Milwaukee.
That's very interesting. To me, they just have to upgrade their starting rotation at the trade deadline. I believe they'll be a team majorly in play for Madison Bumgarner this summer. And I think Bumgarner is somebody that is trending in the right direction in the sense that he's been pitching a lot better. To me, he's only had one bad start all year, and that was ironically against the Yankees. And I think he's going to be by far the best trade asset out there, and I think Milwaukee has the goods to trade for him. And imagine him in that rotation. I think that would make Milwaukee one of the teams to beat out in the National League. That's a really interesting call there. But I'm going to say the Dodgers. They still have Clayton Kershaw pitching somewhat well. Walker Buehler's a stud. He got off to a slow start, but he's pitching a little better. I like their lineup. Cody Bellinger and Christian Yelich are going to battle out for MVP all year. Corey Seager's back. Kenley Jansen has been a little shaky, especially in postseason play over the last couple of years, but he's still a good closer in this league. But I like the Dodgers better. It was good to have you on today, all right?
Madison, thank you. Keep up the great work.
All right, I'll have you on again some other time, all right?
I'm looking forward to it.
All right.